Hi, everyone, and welcome to Humanistic Management Professionals Live Lunch and Learn. Today we have Isabel Rimanoczy, and we're going to be speaking about sustainability mindset. This format is hosted by the International Humanistic Management Association over at humanisticmanagement.international. We have an academics network, a PhD network. We work with humanistic professionals who are working in the field, and our goal is to help promote humanistic management practices in the world of business and as a mindset and how we move forward as a society. So I'm Jennifer Hancock. I am one of the board members of the USA chapter. I'm also have my own company called Humanist Learning Systems, and then I'd like to introduce Elizabeth, my co-host.
Hi everyone, I'm Elizabeth Castillo at Arizona State University. Nice to meet you.
And our guest today is Isabel Rimanoczy from the LEAP and the Prime Working Group on Sustainability Mindset. And she's going to talk to us about how to cultivate a sustainability mindset in ourselves and in our organizations. So Isabel, please introduce yourself and give us an overview of what it is you work on and why.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm very happy to be in this setting and also see a lot of friends I know and a lot of friends I don't know yet. So I am very happy to be in this space. I'm originally from Argentina. Let's get that out of the way of my accent. And have been living in the US for 20 years, a little bit over 20 years. I am an educator and I focus on the being dimension. And I have met my purpose, my life purpose, to develop change accelerators. So what I will share with you today is a little bit about why I'm doing what I'm doing, how I'm doing it, how others can do it or not doing it. What I will explain a little bit about the research on which the sustainability mindset framework is based, and then we will address questions. I was very excited to receive all those questions ahead of a time. I think about 70% I could see before, and arrange my presentation based on those. I hope to be addressing those, and the new questions that came later, we will see how we include them today. And also, as I will be talking, I invite you to type into the chat box anytime. Don't wait until I make a big silence to collect your thoughts, because you can capture something that we may be bringing into the conversation and will enrich the exchange. So let me start by asking you to take a moment to go inside. And we will do a little bit less than a minute, but I would like to anchor this hour in a very personal experience that you will have with yourself. So if you want to close your eyes or just make a little bubble so that you're not connected visually what is going in your room on the screen. And if you can go in your imagination back to a moment where you were feeling very much in harmony. Where were you at that time? Try to picture what was that moment, where were you as you were feeling very balanced, very much in harmony and at peace. And I will be silent so that you can go and retrieve that moment and see what sensation it brings you up. Okay, trying not to lose this feeling that it created in yourself. Welcome back to this virtual room. And I just invite you to notice what was that feeling that came together with these images that you played for yourself. And the reason that I wanted to start our time together today with this was because I think we all have so many things that we are doing every day, and we are in such a rhythm that to go back to a place where we felt in harmony and calm and at peace can be very nurturing pause and nurturing anchor. And as you will see, much of what I will share with you today relates to this more holistic, incorporating the different parts of ourselves to where we work or where we interact. And this pause is a necessary aspect, because when we are on a run, it's very difficult to be holistic in a place, to be fully present. So what I would like to do now is share my screen. Okay, so what I will share with you now is a little bit of the what, the why it is important, how does it work, how can you use it, and the so what implications of a mindset for sustainability. So let's start with the situation. I always say that we need a few very basic things like food, water, energy, air, and we need others. However, what our world looks today is very different from these basic needs. We have, well, you can read it on your own. We have nuclear waste, fertilizers, runoff, contamination of water. We have intolerance. We have a lot of weather-related issues. And we also have depression, addiction, and sense of isolation. So something is definitely going wrong in how we are obtaining these things that are so important for us. And that is why I think, well, this has not been like this forever. It has been like this for the last maybe 50, 80 years. So I think it's time for a mindset 2.0. How can we do the things differently? But where does it come from? It comes from our mindset. And this is based on a research that I did a few years ago at Columbia University. I was interested in understanding the motivations, why some leaders spontaneously engage in sustainability initiatives without anyone asking them, because I thought if we understand what is going on, what they knew, maybe we could be able to intentionally develop a new generation of leaders that are more sustainability minded. So my research was a qualitative exploratory study at Columbia University, and I basically did interviews with outstanding CEOs, VPs, directors that personally had championed initiatives that changed their corporations. The findings were clustered in two areas, in the area of the thinking and the being. In the area of the thinking, particularly, I found a presence of system thinking. Not that they said, I'm a system thinker, but during the conversations, in their interviews, I could find that they had a different logic. They were not thinking of either planet or profit. They were thinking with a both and logic. They had a sense of interconnectedness, thinking of multiple stakeholders. They were thinking on the long term, not only on the short term. And they understood that there is a cyclical flow. And also in terms of innovative thinking, because for them as pioneers, it was very clear that we had to reinvent everything that we were doing, or at least what they were doing in their institution, because the way they were doing it was not appropriate or not sustainable, or it was doing some damage that they didn't intend to do. So opening the doors to innovative thinking meant being creative, accepting their own creativity, but also being very versatile, very adaptive. And then on the being dimension, that was maybe the most surprising findings. I found that these individuals had a sense of oneness with nature. They were very reflective and also practiced several introspective processes because they were interested in increasing their self-awareness. They were very concerned at different points of their life with what is my larger purpose? Why am I here? Why am I doing what am I doing? And why am I in this position? What is my responsibility in a larger sense? And they realized that collaboration was the best option. So with that in mind, let me give you quickly a definition, because some people in the questions asked what is the definition of a mindset. I define sustainability mindset as a way of thinking and being. And that results from an understanding of the ecosystem, how the ecosystem works, but also from a social sensitivity that a person develops, and from an understanding or introspective focus on the personal values. What are my values? And what are the aspects of my higher self? All this shapes a different way of thinking and being. That it's like a lens through which we analyze information, and as a consequence, it drives a different type of action in the world. Action that is aimed at the larger good for the whole, so to say. So how to develop this mindset? That's very nice, but is this something that we can develop? And what I wanted to add is that when I shared these findings, I focused only on aspects that we could intentionally develop. I left out things that were maybe traumatic experiences, very personal things, or character-based issues. But what are the things that we as educators in different settings, whether it's corporate, academia, family, community, what we can develop if we are intentional with it and know what we're doing. So basically it is following a sequence of developing awareness of what is happening, but also how are we personally contributing to what is happening, because otherwise data is just data, and you know, it's too bad that there are 1 in 6 people that don't have access to water. I have water here, well, too bad for them. It doesn't connect with me and with my life. So developing an awareness that is connected to what is my own contribution, either of what I do or what I don't do, and how does that relate with the larger picture. Exploring the paradigms on which my behaviors are based, and that is, I always give the image of an iceberg. We see a tip, which is the actions, but we rarely see the worldview on which we are based when we make decisions, and then getting into action. This image that I'm sharing now is about the different content areas through which we can understand how to develop that mindset. And you see it's 4 types of intelligence: ecoliteracy, understanding what is happening, a broader picture, and connecting the dots, because so many times we have things in silos in our mind. System intelligence, understanding, I shared a little bit about the long-term view, the both and logic, but also emotional intelligence. What is my personal contribution? Unintended, because we are mostly good people, but we are living consequences that we don't intend. So just developing this awareness. And this also connects with the deeper questions, but who am I? What are my values? What is the difference that I want to make in the world? All this anchored in the center on innovative and collaborative action. That is very important, because if we don't anchor the development of a mindset in something real where we can act on, it becomes either overwhelming or disconnected from our reality. So we want to anchor it on something that is very concrete, whether it's a student, then it can be projects. If it's an institution, it could be different aspects of what we are doing. If it's a corporation, areas of our production, or how we frame our operation. I would like to share with you another matrix that I think is helpful to understand how we approach the mindset. You see here on the individual level, we have internal aspects which relate with values, beliefs, purpose, mission, my anchors of my identity. And we have the external, the visible part, which are my behaviors, my habits, the initiatives that I have, how I take leadership on several things. In the collective area, we have the collective assumptions. This is the way we do things here. This is how we see the world. It's the worldview, sometimes internal and unaware, and it was also leading a cause. This is what we collectively want to do. The external part of the collective is seen. How do we see it? In regulations, in innovations, in technology, in solutions, programs, etc. Now, when we look at this framework, think of the sustainability mindset as focusing on the internal column, the left side, both of the individual and the collective. So we will deal with the values, beliefs, the purpose, what is my mission, what is my identity, and also what is our collective set of assumptions, those that we are not aware of, but we are operating upon those. And a little bit on what are the individual change of behaviors that we can prompt, that we can foster, mentor, support. While you will notice or be thinking now that most of our education programs in institutions, trainings, conferences, workshops are related to the external collective. It's talking about what are the regulations, what do we need to change, what does the government, the corporation, what are the technological innovations, what do we need to invent to solve the problems. It is all focused on this lower quadrant mostly. And if you think of an iceberg and the visible part are these visible solutions, but they are based on really what is motivating us, what is pushing us in an unconscious way, many times, our values, the purpose, and that is all this left column. And we are ill-prepared to deal with that. We don't have a language that we feel comfortable, whether it's in a corporation or an institution or education setting. We are not sure how can we bring this conversation into the classroom. How can we talk about values, beliefs, let alone spirituality? We confuse spirituality with religion, and then we cannot talk about this. So there are ways of making this happen. I also wanted to share with you these different levels of caring, and we can also talk about different stages of human development. If you're familiar with spiral dynamics or with integral theory, you will recognize some of the colors. Basically, I simplify this. It is related, what is my level of caring? And in the questions that I received prior to this workshop, there were some questions about how do we deal with people that don't see it, that don't care. And we have to think that we are all in different levels of making meaning. Some people are focused on see the world and interpret everything about what is related to me, meaning my health, my job, my safety, my money, my family. That is where my attention is and where actions will come. I will be motivated to act in that level. Others are, well, yes, it's that, but it's also, you know, our community, our health. Now I'm a little bit more collective. It's our collective wealth. And the community can be ethnic community, can be the neighborhood, can be the corporation, can be a university, can be a town, can have different levels. The next level is a little broader. The level of caring is expanding. Now we are thinking of our well-being. It's not just health or wealth. It's what does well-being meaning? It's more holistic, and we're getting more into spiritual dimension. And the other one is where we see what is the human's place in nature and in the whole ecosystem, and what is our role, our place, our responsibility towards the planet, and what is my place in the universe. You can see that it's not that we negate the previous ones, but it is aggregating, and they're all present. Like in our brain, we have the different levels of reptiles and up to the cortex development. So what are the new frontiers? And the new frontiers is that we have the opportunity to be developing a different way of thinking and interpreting what it is. So we are very used to think of me and us, either or, short term, doing, what can we have, what can we do, be very functional and mostly fragmented in silo, whether it's disciplines in what we study or what we teach, or also in the corporation, everything is fragmented, and we give a high volume to the rational. Now this speed and quantity. Now this is our frontier of development. how can we expand into thinking to all of us, all that is, both and, long term, not only short term, doing, having, and being, thinking not only on functionality, but what is the purpose? Why are we doing what we are doing? Understanding the interconnections, incorporating our intuitive wisdom. That is, we have it, we just don't access it in the everyday, and it is disqualified. But why do we have it if we are not using it? And slowing down and focusing on quality. Now, you asking, yes, but how? So, and these last two slides are really taking many of your questions. And I was asking, I could hear your voices, yeah, this is very nice, but how do I do it? And that was connected with many of your questions. So one of the thoughts that I came up to start where they are, whoever the they is, the audience is that you have in front of you, try to understand where they are in the level of making meaning. Because if you talk to someone about that we're connected with all that is, but the person is very interested in how to protect their job, safety, then they will not hear you. And that relates with finding and using one of the most important motivations, human motivations, which is the fear of loss. In our more basic constitution, we are afraid of losing what we have, who we are, identity. You can put any qualifications, but how can we show that there is a loss that will be happening if we don't act? And that can be at any level. You really can adopt it to wherever your audience is. Try to understand what are the things at stake with this audience. Seek examples that people can relate to. If you are talking to an audience in Manila, seek of examples that are related to their community, of what is possible, what others are doing, so that the examples are inspiring, but also are very, cannot be discounted. Oh yes, they do these things in the US, but here we would never be able to do it. Or the opposite, oh, they do these things in Denmark, but we are here in the US. So seek examples, and thanks God today are enough examples to quote. Build on visions and values. There's an important thing about getting rid of the dramatic part of the threats, because threats, yes, but are not a very good motivator. We get more excited to do things when we have a vision. What is it that we can do? And what are the values that are important for us? When we go tap into that, it really touches the deep core. Go with the early adopters. Change is never mainstream when it starts. So who are your first partners, the people that sort of get what you're saying, are excited or like it, and go with them. They will be your team, your best teammates. Create a community of belonging. One of the things, and I saw several of our lead members here in the webinar when we started, is the importance of having a community of people that see it like we do, so that we don't feel that we are a little crazy. Okay, we are a little crazy, but it's many of us, or it's several of us. Communicate. Communicating what you're doing, even if there are small things, is very powerful in showing it. Appeal to the higher self, so that the person feels holistically appreciated. We have this yearning of becoming full person to the space, but we are so used to leave a big part of ourselves out of our conversations with friends, in the classroom, in the corporation. Make a space for this higher self to show up. Create circles of dialogue. Very important. Some people say, how can I do it in a corporation where leadership and executive training or development, rather, it's a key avenue. Place individuals in an unfamiliar context. We learn so much more when we are in an unfamiliar context. And very important to create break, pauses, retreats, like we did a little minute when we started. Or some people start a meeting with 1 minute silence. All this reshapes the type of connection that we start to have with others in a non-verbal way. It is a message. Make it reality-based, not something about saving the whales. What happens? Why? What can I do where we are? Where we are, what are our possibilities? Use the passion of the people, not your passion. You use your own, but help others find what they really care about, because that will be the best fuel for action. Go back to the foundational values. There were some questions about how can we in a non-profit implement develop a sustainability mindset, or what in rural communities. Go back to the values, the ancestral values, maybe ancestor, not 300 years ago, 50 years ago. What did your grandparents say about this? And there we have a very close anchor to start reliving and bringing back these foundational values on which an organization or a community is based. Make it intentional, not just happenstance. When we build intention, we program, like a neurolinguistic program says, we program our unconscious to be focused on something, purpose-driven. When we ask, why are we doing this? We ask 3 times and we go to the deeper purpose. Tailored language, very important. If you are talking to someone, you need to speak their language. If it's a corporation, if it's an academic, come with research. If it is a student, come with reality, something that appeals to their age and group. If you're talking to a community, neighborhood, what is the language that they can understand? Use your personal gifts and skills. Yesterday I was on a call with a professor in the University of Denver, Colorado, and she said, what can I do? And I said, well, what are you good at? Are you good at writing? Okay, how can you share more about what you're doing with your students? Are you good at tweeting? How can you use social media to share what you're doing and inspiring others? Whatever our gifts are, that is our asset, our base. Remember the areas of control of influence. It's something that we can control. Well, only we can manage our habits, we can influence, we don't know how far it goes. When we influence, we don't have control, but it can go very, very far, the ripple effects. And bring lightness to it. There is such a heaviness in our media, in our world, in our news, and how can we bring lightness into it? And lightness, both the lightness and also the light of light. Because I think when we start with ourselves as messenger, there's so much more that we communicate. It's not just the word. The word is, again, like a tip of the iceberg. We communicate in a non-verbal way, in an energetic level to others, messages about who we are, our beliefs, our values, and put the being first. So I put some logos of other resources if you're familiar with some of these institutions, and I will share the PowerPoint. And here are some more resources. But let me pause now and let's do questions, voices.
Yeah, just real quick to everybody, if you have questions, please put them in the chat room and Elizabeth will ask them on your behalf. Also, to let you know, these books, we have links to them on the International Humanistic Management website store. And so, you can link to them there. You can find them on Amazon and things like that. So, Isabel, let's stop sharing the screen and go back to having faces. There we go. So when we talked to set this up, Isabel, we had talked about the practicality, and this is geared towards professionals like who are working in businesses. So when we talked, my sense of it, as I was listening to you, I was thinking, well, this is another way to get at critical thinking and decision making that's integrative of a variety of demands and needs, and not just say the bottom line or the immediacy of it. And that you were talking about that in your presentation, where there's a short-term thinking, but there's also an integrated long-term collective thinking, and this is a moving towards that. is this just for businesses to use, or is it both in an individual practice and an organizational practice?
It's interesting because I think organizations are not artifacts, are people. So I see the big lever of change in the individual. Obviously, the individual connects with another individual and then another, like today we have a lot of people connected in this hour. That is where we can start to leverage our different contributions and influence and review what we are doing in our little area of control or influence. And that is what creates ripple effects, and we can introduce or promote change at our organizational level. But I think it's good to personalize the organization, because if not, it's a big monster out there, and who are there? What is the organization? So I think it makes it manageable when we see the organization is me. Okay, so what are my areas of control and influence?
All right, so if an individual's in a meeting about a supply chain, for instance, how can they bring up a sustainability dynamic into the decision-making that's being made and have that be part of the consideration of whatever's being decided?
Well, I think it takes a little bit of homework because so much is a lack of understanding what are the impacts that we are having with what we are doing, the way we are doing it. So it takes a little bit of homework to start to ask ourselves where are we sourcing our materials? How are we bringing them to where we are? What is the message that we are sending through this? And what are the impacts? And if these things tomorrow are in the news, would we feel embarrassed about it? Would someone be tweeting about this and we would say, oh no, we better do something about this? So thinking of the transparency, because many times we do things thinking it's not, no one really knows. First, we need to realize it because it may be unintentional. And then once we see it, okay, what if this would be tomorrow in the media? And how would we like it to be? What is something that we would like to innovate to be a change leader and maybe set new standards? We get ahead of our competitors because we are doing something that the consumer really will like or our vendors will really like. So it takes a little bit of homework. I don't think you can just throw a question into a room for people that are not informed. But when we have a little bit of information about how are we doing this, I discovered that we are doing this and this. Did you know that? And how would we feel about and what can we do? Very much important to engage others. No, it's not that I have the ready-made solution, but to come with some information can help.
So it sounds a lot like, you know, the actual application of this is not just a personal, you have to ask yourself some questions, but if you're in a group setting, it's almost like you're using Socratic method to facilitate and push collaborative problem solving with these other dimensions being considered as part of the decision. Am I hearing that correctly?
Yes, and I think also you need to go back to see where they are. You remember the things start where they are. So sometimes there is a groupthink that takes over, and even if you and 2 or 3 colleagues in a meeting think in the same way, there may be 2 that are more vocal or more assertive, and that becomes how we think in this organization. And you could be majority, but maybe you're not voicing it. So how do you make a point that touches and addresses maybe the fear of loss, where these people are standing on? If they're standing on their job, their competitive advantage, the income that they're making, the profits in their division, how they're meeting their goals, how can we connect these activities that we are doing and the way we are doing it with the potential losses if we are liable? Because more and more the unsustainability is becoming a strategic liability. And so what happens if suddenly our CEO, who doesn't know what we are doing, hears that we will be sued for something that we are doing in our division? Oh, now I have fear of loss. I mean, I don't care about sustainability, but now I'm nervous. So we have to see what is the context in which we are operating, and what are the levers, the low-hanging fruit, where I get the highest impact with the lowest effort.
So is one of the ways to start introducing this cultural shift, because it's a cultural shift in how an organization makes decisions, right? And you talk about low-hanging fruit as a way to start that cultural shift?
I talk about how individuals make decisions.
Okay.
So let's go back to the individual, because I think it's overwhelming to say, how can I change how my organization makes decisions? So I don't know, but I know that I can change how I make decisions, and I may be talking to someone, and I may be influencing someone. So the individuals are the ones where we have, this is the low-hanging fruit, because these are people that we can talk to, and we can see what they care about and what their values are, and how comfortable they are with what they know, and also where there comes some cognitive dissonance. That was a very important finding in my research, that at some point these individuals, these leaders, realized that the negative impacts that their decisions or the company's decisions were having. And they say, well, you know, I'm not a bad person, and we are doing this. I felt horrible. I couldn't stand it, but I didn't have a solution either. But that was a tension. This cognitive dissonance was the most powerful lever for change. They just couldn't live with it. I don't say that it took them a week. It took them longer than that, because we live with the tension, as it happens in many other areas of our life, when we feel that, oh, this is not who I want to be, but I am doing it. So we live with the tension for a while until we can find a way to channel it in some action. What are some things that are in my area of control? I'm not changing the organization. Let's start changing what I am doing.
Elizabeth, do you have any questions for Isabel?
The audience does, so I'll start with these. So I'm going to start with one that Carol LeBlond had sent in when she registered. What kind of tools do you think companies will need to change their mindset and business model into a more sustainable one?
Here again, I think there are a variety of tools. Some tools are related to the strategy. So understanding the strategy from the perspective of liability. What is it that we are doing? And what are some areas that we could be in the news tomorrow? Well, that could be at a very strategic level. Could be going back to the values of the organization. So what are the values on which our company was founded? And how are we, could we articulate them in the context of today? Let's not talk about how can we fight climate change. Let's see how can we embody better in the 21st century these values. That can be very inspiring. I think that pauses to think and reflect are very simple, inexpensive, and hugely powerful tools. For example, just starting a meeting with 1 minute silence. It just gives a different sense, a different presence. It allows to focus more. Asking deeper questions like, why are we doing this? Ask it 4 times and you will get to the real reason. And that is where people start to find a common grounding of common value, because when we ask a question 4 times, why are we doing it? Oh, because we haven't been doing it like that. But why? Well, it has been efficient, and and why? Well, because it's cost effective. Okay, and why? Well, so that we get better profits. And why? And then at some point we are faced like in a mirror. But why are we doing this anyway? And we don't have to have the answers, just to leave the question is very powerful.
I'm going to tie this to some comments. Well, Linda Urban had asked about your quadrants model. So was it Ken Wilber? We had a couple people ask about that. And have you seen organizations work with the all quadrants, all levels analytical model as a tool for analyzing their decision making?
Haven't seen. I have read for several integral consultants that are trying to do it. I haven't seen any papers about how they're implementing it, and I don't think it is easy. And that goes back to the language. I think the language sometimes gets in the way. And we really have to tailor the language to someone that can. If we wouldn't go to Thailand trying to speak Italian, because no one will understand it. So how are we adopting ways to communicate that people don't discount what we have to say because they don't understand it?
Jennifer, did you want to weigh in on that? Oh.
No, I'm fine. I think it's interesting. So.
Okay, we've got some more questions in. So the next one is from Alan Gauthier. In your research, Isabel, what has been the influence of sustainability-oriented nonprofits partnering with companies to develop a sustainability mindset and action? And then Alexander asks a related question, anything relevant to sustainability in the nonprofit world that would be welcome?
Well, I saw one of these questions of the nonprofits. I had the advantage to think of it before. I think in terms of developing sustainability perspective in a nonprofit, going back to the values, why are we doing what we are doing? When I was about to do, I was framing my research, I said, what will be the audience that I will interview? And I said, I'm not going to interview religious leaders, and I'm not going to interview philanthropic organizations and NGOs, because they already have in their core, in their constitution, they have the purpose of serving the larger good. So I want to research those that didn't have it as their core, and yet they did it. So I think when we're dealing with nonprofit organizations or philanthropic NGOs, we have a good avenue going back to why are we doing what we're doing anyway, and seeing the systemic interconnections, because environment, if you look at the SDGs, there's 17 SDGs, and it's very nice categories, but actually they're all connected, or at least 89% are connected. So it is never about only environment. Environment has social implications, has implications on well-being and where we live, how we live. So to see these interconnections, even in an NGO that is focused on one area, will enrich their understanding and lead them to more holistic solutions that don't leave out some of the key stakeholders. And what was the other? Oh, about partnership, right? So the one on partnership there, today there are some very interesting examples how many corporations are partnering and are seeking dialogue with non-profit or NGOs or famous non-profit organizations. And there are critiques like, oh, if this organization is now funded by a corporation, how will this create a bias? And I think in the long term, these things work out, but just to have a dialogue is such an important thing, because you remember 15 years ago, 20 years ago, it was one against the other. And now if we can quote some of these, I mean, I'm not a Walmart fan, but when I see that Walmart is doing something with an NGO, I say, well, we need to talk about it. We need to show it. They're not perfect. Well, neither am I. Neither is anyone, because no one has it all totally figured out. But every step in the right direction should be celebrated and taken as an example of what can be done. And then what are the things that I want to do differently because I don't like what they are doing here or there. So I think the more we can show these partnerships with community, with students, with NGOs, with business, have different stakeholders come to the table to have a conversation. And when I say conversation, it's about listening to each other. One of the things that I put in my slide was dialogue. And when I talk about dialogues, I'm not talking about debate. I'm talking about a dialogue where we can listen to the other without having to refute what he's saying, not to judge, not to say, oh, this is right or this is wrong, just listen. That is such an important practice that we need to have more at any level.
Can I jump in?
Next.
So with organizations and corporations and businesses, they'll often have a corporate social responsibility thing that they do, but it's often separate from the rest of the organization, right? It's how they volunteer, but it's not necessarily integrated into the decision making. Do you have any advice for people who maybe want to integrate the values of the why they're working on this particular social responsibility aspect and help bring it into the organization in a more holistic way?
Yeah. Well, one of the bullets that I shared was using the platforms of development, whether it's executive development, leadership development. And there are, for example, I have worked with corporations where we use the challenges that the people in CSR divisions see as the projects anchoring a leadership development program where different competencies will be developed while these people are, a group of leaders or employees, are addressing and trying to solve real current CSR issues of the company. So that is a place where you merge their reality with something strategic, with something very concrete. And as they are working and trying to tackle these complex challenges, they get trained in both, and they understand stakeholders, different stakeholders. They get a very multi-layered training, but it is experience level and it's based on reality. So I think helping CSR people come to the leadership design table, and how can they team with their HR talent development sectors to see how they can work together on programs and designs. That's very easy and something that they already have there.
So Michael Santonino makes a good point. He says that the sustainability mindset is a really great, nice idea, but Greenpeace and other such organizations have been telling this kind of story since 1971. How can we tell stories of changed leaders and managers that have it in their DNA to transform culture? Should we be looking for models like at Patagonia, Al Gore, Ben & Jerry's, religious schools or hospitals? How do you meet people where they are, but help them get to a new level?
I think inspiring examples is wonderful. And if you find examples close to your industry, even better, because there's the phenomenon of Me Too, and how, oh my God, they are doing it, how we are not doing it. Suddenly we are the bad ones. No one wants to be the bad one. So if you find a competitor in your close area that is doing something, that could be a wonderful motivation. Then we have today so many stories. For example, one platform is Aim to Flourish. I put it in one of my slides. This is a wonderful platform used in academia. It started at Case Western University, and what they created is a way for professors to introduce the SDGs by inviting students, go out into your community, into your neighborhood, and find a company that is profitable, but it's also through it's profitable by providing services or products that meet some of the SDGs. Not philanthropic, so they need to be profitable in the traditional sense. But what they are doing is not inventing the next iPhone. They are doing something that really will solve the big problems of our planet. And we have the wonderful framework of the SDGs. So they teach the SDGs, they show the SDGs, the students go out and say, I don't think these companies exist. And then after a few weeks, they start to say, oh yes, and they interview the leader. So they have a first-hand experience. And then they can nominate that company for a prize. So that is a very powerful instrument we have handy. And if you go on there, even if you are not a professor, you will find in the database, they have a resource, a database of hundreds of corporations around the world. Many are small, but that are meeting some of SDGs, and at the same time, they're being profitable. So these are very good examples for saying, well, this is possible and all these are doing. B Corporation is another one.
Real quick, just because I don't know where everybody's coming from, SDG means Sustainable Development Goals. And they, so if you're wondering what that was, that's what she's talking about, the Sustainable Development Goals and how they get incorporated into an organization. And that's actually probably a really good way to maybe, think about the questions that you might ask about your own corporation and what they could work on in terms of social responsibility could come out of the Sustainable Development Goals. So. And
strategic responsibility. And I like to add it because one day I was talking to a person in China. He was the dean of a business school. And he said, well, yes, this is very interesting in sustainability, but here we first need to work on business. Business is what we do. And I was thinking, I couldn't answer that day, but then I was thinking, is the business without a planet? And we are at a point where we have to think strategically because our landscape has been changing quickly, and we see the impact of weather-related issues, of social issues. We see it in our communities. We see it impacting consumers, impacting our vendors, impacting the materials we source, how we source it. So it is very strategic, and it will be a liability for those that are still sleeping and not seeing it. So the sooner we realize it's not a nice to have, it is something that we need. And the 17 SDGs, I think it's the most important agenda of what we need to do. And that is the framework. That is our homework. That is what we need to do, and within that framework.
All right, Elizabeth, we've got a little less than 8 minutes left. So we'll see where we are after one last question.
Okay, I'm going to tie 3 questions together. So Vanessa says that I really enjoy your focus on the individual and what I can do. So that sense of agency, that it's not out there, but we can solve the problem. Any top tips from your experience to help this different focus? And related, Galia Napier says, can you talk a bit about anchoring intentions?
Anchoring intentions. I was trying to see where that came from. I talk about anchors of our identity, and I wonder if that was what the person meant. Because in anchors of our identity, and that relates with the first part of your question, is really asking us what are the values that are important for us. And this is the question, the 6 whys or 4 whys. And I give an example. I am in a group of students at an MBA. I was asking them, why are you doing this program? Why are you doing the MBA? And so the answers were because I want to get more money, and once I graduate, I have better possibilities to get a better job. Okay, well, and why? Well, because I get better paid. Okay, and why? Well, if I have more money, then I can maybe rent a better place or get a mortgage, and I want to get married and have a family, and why? And then there is a pause, because we start to realize, are we doing this because we like to consume more? What is behind consumption? What is the more fundamental need that is behind that? Is this a sense of being happy, being loved, being with others, being at peace? What are these deeper motivations? And that relates to the anchors of our identity, because many times we get hooked in growth, success, achievement, competition, be better than. And you know what? If you ask 3 times, 4 times, we get at the higher level of ourselves, and a level where we feel more, yes, actually, that's what we want. And that is a very powerful fuel for reviewing our decisions. Then why am I working where I'm working? And I've tons of examples of students that after a semester started to review where they were living, where they were working, who they were hanging out with, what type of, how they spend their money, how they spend their time. Very profound transformations, very profound.
And then Harmon says, are you really saying that this is ultimately comes down to figuring out ways to help infuse the higher levels of caring into the ME level? I'm not sure what the me
management education, probably.
Yes, but also ourselves, I think. Is like
the me. Okay, yeah. Yes, but I think you have to see when you can say it in those words and when not. And it takes courage, going always a step more than it is allowed. Now, if you go 3 steps more, you may fall into the precipice, and then you have to crawl up again, and you lose your audience. No? And so it's a very delicate balance, but definitely it takes courage, because if we don't say unusual things, then we don't foster any change, and we don't challenge the thinking.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yes.
And I think we'll close with Roland's question. Are examples from the corporate world on how a sustainability officer has succeeded in changing the mindset of directors and managers? I think that's where we get into it, is like you have less authority than people above you, power dynamics in an organization. He says he came across one example of Dell EMC, where the chief sustainability officer updates the company's corporate governance and nominating committee at least twice a year on sustainability issues. Would this be a model, and what might be some other models for working with formal authority of people that have positional power higher than you?
I think a report is a way. It's maybe not the most powerful way, because it touches here and it doesn't engage the real motivation which comes from here. And I say a habit, changing a habit with that, well, yes, I should do that, is temporary. But when we change, we have a transformation that is lasting. And I would always go through making pauses, through leadership development. What are these places where we can pause and have a time that is not in mid of the doing? Because when we are doing, it's like we're driving a car, we cannot pause to see where we are going. So we have to stop and say, where are we going? And then we can shift direction.
Excellent. Thank you so much. You know, I think this was really, really interesting. And the last kind of comment that came up is we need to normalize these conversations, and so that they're integrated in just how we have these conversations in general, that they become a regular part of how we make decisions for ourselves within maybe our family unit, and also within the communities and within the organizations we're in. I think that's, you know, a really great way to go about it. I want to thank you, Isabel, for joining us. That was very enlightening. And to let everybody else know, again, this was the International Humanistic Management Association's Humanistic Professionals Lunch and Learn. And you can go to our website. We have a regular newsletter. We have memberships for both individuals and organizations. And you know, we hope you come back next time. We do host, we have a whole lineup of this for the fall. In September, we have Anne-Marie Puente from Greyston. She's going to be talking about open hiring, which is where they hire without actually doing any background checks or anything. They just, if you sign up, they hire you. And then in October, we're going to be speaking to Benito Tehaken out of the Philippines, who's going to be talking about ethical wages and good jobs. And then we also have one set up for November, but we don't have the topic yet on that. So do sign up for our mailing list to get notified of the next version of the next one of these. And we hope to see you then. So thank you so much.
Can I say one more thing?
Sure.
Well, any academic that is interested in learning more about this open and free network that we have of academics developing the sustainability mindset, check my email that I think Jennifer will make it available, and I will be happy to send you any information. There are several of our members here. Nice group of people. You will have fun.
Great. And the other thing is we're going to send out an email to you with a survey for how we're doing these conversations, so we get an idea of who you want us to talk to, what kind of topics you'd like us to cover, and the format of this Lunch and Learn. So that'll be going out as well. So thank you very much.